Who was Deborah, the woman who led Israel in times of war? How did a prophetess and judge inspire an entire army to confront one of their most feared enemies, Sisera? Today we'll uncover the astonishing biblical story of Deborah and the battle that changed Israel's destiny forever. Get ready to discover courage, leadership, and faith in action in a story that defies every stereotype. How could Israel survive amid powerful enemies when everything seemed stacked against them? Deborah's story takes place during the period of the Judges, a turbulent time for Israel. After Joshua's death, the people had no king or strong leader to unite them. Instead, they suffered constant attacks from neighboring peoples who sought to dominate their land. One of their most formidable threats was Sisera, commander of King Jabin of Canaan's army. With his powerful forces and war chariots, Sisera oppressed Israel, instilling fear and discouragement. The people were trapped, with no hope of victory or deliverance. In the midst of this chaos, Deborah emerged, a prophetess and judge called by God to lead Israel. Her leadership came at a crucial moment when courage and faith were more necessary than ever to face a relentless enemy. This is the story of how Israel, against all odds, was liberated under the direction of a God-inspired woman. How did a woman become God's voice and supreme leader in a male-dominated culture? In antiquity, when men were typically chiefs and warriors, Deborah stood out as a unique and powerful figure. She was far more than a woman. She was Israel's prophetess, judge, and spiritual leader, chosen by God to guide a people in crisis. She is the only female judge mentioned in the Bible, and her story is found in Judges chapters 4 and 5. She did more than resolve daily civil disputes. She wielded leadership that combined wisdom, spirituality, and moral authority. People came to her for counsel and justice, confident she spoke with divine insight. As a prophetess, Deborah received direct messages from God, which guided her decisions. Her ability to interpret God's will made her a respected and feared leader, even among those oppressing Israel. But her leadership wasn't only spiritual or judicial. Deborah also played an active military role. When God revealed it was time to confront Sisera and his forces, she acted without hesitation. She summoned Barak, a military commander, to gather an army and face the enemy. Barak, however, hesitated and asked Deborah to accompany him into battle. This request reveals the trust and respect she inspired, not only among civilians, but also among the warriors. Her presence stood for divine blessing and leadership, something no general could ignore. Her strategic wisdom and ability to motivate the people were crucial for Israel's willingness to fight again for their freedom. Deborah was not a passive figure. She was a woman of action, courage, and conviction who transformed fear into hope. Her story breaks stereotypes about female leadership and shows that God can use anyone, regardless of gender, to fulfill His greatest purposes. Deborah exemplifies how faith, wisdom, and courage combine to bring liberation and justice in difficult times. Ultimately, she was the perfect blend of prophecy, justice, and valor, and her influence was decisive in Israel's emergence from oppression. How did a downtrodden army led by a hesitant commander defeat such a powerful enemy? The battle against Sisera is one of the most dramatic stories in the Old Testament, and shows how faith and courage can change history. When God spoke to Deborah, He gave clear instructions. It was time to free Israel from the yoke of Jabin, king of Canaan, and his military commander Sisera, known for his well-equipped army and iron chariots. Deborah was to call Barak, a military leader, and order him to assemble 10,000 men from the tribes of Naphtali and Zebulun. Barak didn't go alone. Aware of the enemy's strength, and perhaps doubting his own, he requested Deborah's presence in battle, which she accepted without hesitation. Her accompaniment was not merely symbolic. It represented divine presence and support, vital to uplift the soldiers' morale. The confrontation took place at Mount Tabor, a strategic terrain with defensive advantages. Sisera's army descended with their iron chariots and strong weapons, but they failed to foresee divine intervention. According to the biblical account, God caused Sisera's chariots to become mired in the mud following a storm, paralyzing the enemy's advance. Meanwhile, the Israelite forces, motivated and guided by Deborah and Barak, attacked with strength and resolve, achieving a decisive victory. The battle was so complete that Sisera could barely escape. He fled to the tent of Jael, a woman who, in a bold and courageous act, ended his life, securing Israel's liberation. This unexpected ending shows that deliverance did not come solely from military strength, but also from the courage and cunning of women like Deborah and Jael, who played key roles in the story. The battle against Sisera wasn't just a clash of human forces. It was a powerful demonstration of God's working through obedient, brave leaders. Deborah, with her steadfast faith, and Barak, with his military leadership, became instruments to fulfill the divine plan and change Israel's history. This story reminds us that even in seemingly insurmountable adversity, faith and courage can transform a nation's destiny. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss more content like this. Now, let's keep going. What can we learn today from a woman who led with faith and courage in a difficult era? Deborah's story is more than a fascinating narrative of battles and prophecies. It's a timeless leadership and faith manual relevant to anyone facing challenges in personal, professional, or spiritual life. First, Deborah teaches us that true leadership arises from obedience to God and trust in His direction. She didn't seek power or fame. She rose because God called her to fulfill a purpose. Her authority stemmed from her deep connection to God, enabling her to make bold, wise decisions, even in a culture hostile to female leaders. This reminds us that effective leadership depends not solely on human skill, but on alignment with higher values and purposes. Deborah also exemplifies the importance of courage amid adversity. Facing an enemy as powerful as Sisera demanded moral and physical bravery. Her confidence and steadfastness inspired Barak and the army to rise and fight at a time when many likely felt fear and discouragement. This courage is grounded in faith, in the certainty they were not alone and that God went before them. Another fundamental lesson is collaboration and trust in others. Though Deborah was the spiritual and civil leader, she recognized Barak's need for military leadership. She didn't lead alone. She partnered wisely, showing humility and wisdom in combining her gifts with others. This is essential for successful leadership, knowing when to entrust tasks and rely on others. Deborah and Jael's stories also illustrate the transformative power of women in history and society. They broke cultural norms of their time, proving God can use anyone, regardless of gender, for significant purposes. This message is especially meaningful today, when equity and recognition for diverse leaders are increasingly sought. Finally, Deborah's story invites us to be agents of change and hope amidst impossible situations. Her active faith and effective leadership didn't just free Israel, they renewed hope and identity for the people. Each of us can be a vessel for transformation, acting with faith, courage, and commitment. What can Deborah teach us today about confronting our own Sisera? Though her story is ancient, its message remains powerfully relevant. We all face personal battles, in work, in family, in health, or in spiritual life. These modern-day Sisera forces may seem as powerful as Jabin's army, but Deborah's life shows that victory doesn't depend on human might. It depends on faith, courage, and purpose-driven leadership. Deborah invites us to seek divine wisdom before making major decisions. In a world full of noise and uncertainty, taking time to connect with God, listen attentively, and act according to divine guidance can be the difference between success and failure. Like her, we can be people who inspire hope and confidence in others. Her example challenges us to break barriers and stereotypes, especially in contexts where voices of women or minorities are overlooked. Deborah reminds us that leadership doesn't depend on gender, age, or social status. It depends on character, faith, and the courage to act when others hesitate. A vital lesson she imparts is the importance of teamwork and collaboration. Deborah didn't fight alone. She brought Barak on board and trusted Jael's bravery for final victory. This teaches that even if our calling is great, we need allies and to work together to overcome challenges. Finally, Deborah's story calls us to become courageous leaders in our own communities. We may not lead armies, but we can act with integrity, wisdom, and determination in our families, jobs, and social circles. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's the decision to act despite fear, trusting we are not alone. Reflect. What is your Sisera that challenges you today? What's preventing you from advancing? What steps can you take with faith and courage to conquer your promised land? Deborah teaches us that God can use anyone to transform reality, if we are willing to listen to His voice and act decisively. Her story is a powerful reminder that, in the hardest battles, God is present and ready to grant us victory. Deborah's story shows that with faith, courage, and leadership, we can overcome any challenge, no matter how impossible it seems. If her example of courage and trust in God inspired you, please like this video, subscribe so you don't miss more inspiring Bible stories, and share in the comments which lesson from Deborah impacted you most. Your opinion is very important to us and helps us continue creating content that uplifts and motivates. Thank you for joining us on this spiritual journey. We'll see you in the next video with more powerful stories that strengthen faith and leadership.